The first scream shattered the night at exactly 2:17 a.m. It wasn't the scream of pain alone, it was the scream of a man who believed he was about to be executed. Orderlies slammed into the walls outside room 304. A heart monitor shrieked as numbers spiked past safe limits. Security was already running, batons raised, because the patient inside had just broken a man's nose with one hand while screaming words no one in the hospital understood. Broken arrow. The doctors said he was paranoid. The police said he was dangerous. The chart said John Doe, violent, uncooperative. But the nurse standing frozen in the doorway knew something was wrong. Because men with nothing left to lose don't use military codes from wars that officially never happened. And because when the old man locked eyes with her, his terror wasn't madness. It was recognition. 5 minutes later, she would break every rule she had sworn to follow. 5 words would leave her mouth, words that hadn't been spoken aloud since 1972. And the moment she said them, someone far away would hear. That was the moment St. Jude's Hospital stopped being a place of healing and became a battlefield. St. Jude's Memorial Hospital slept lightly. Even at night, it never truly rested. Machines breathed for patients. Elevators hummed like tired insects. The ICU lights stayed harsh and white, refusing darkness the way doctors refused death. Rain streaked down the windows in long gray lines, blurring the city into a smear of shadows and neon. Inside, the smell of antiseptic hung thick in the air. Room 304 was the problem. Arthur Vance, listed as John Doe until someone finally checked his wallet, was tearing the room apart. "Do not touch me." His voice cracked like gravel under boots. A metal tray lay overturned on the floor. Gauze, alcohol wipes, and syringes scattered like debris after an explosion. An orderly pressed a towel to his bleeding nose, eyes wide with shock. Dr. Gregory Evans stood in the hallway, jaw clenched, clipboard shaking slightly in his hands. "Restrain him," he snapped, now. Evans was young. 28. Brilliant on paper. Still believed protocols solved everything. "If we don't get that IV in him," he continued, "he goes septic. Sedate him." Full restraints. 2 security guards hesitated at the door. Inside, the old man crouched on the bed, skeletal arms wrapped tight around his chest. His hospital gown hung loose on his frame, skin yellowed and thin, mapped with scars that didn't belong to accidents. He held a plastic water pitcher like a weapon. "Stay back," he growled. "I know the sequence. First the needle, then the black site." Sarah Jenkins watched from the edge of the chaos. She didn't rush in. She never rushed. 45 years old. 20 years in trauma. She had learned that fear had patterns. Real psychosis spiraled. Real terror focused. This man wasn't flailing. He was defending a position. "Mr. Vance," Sarah said calmly, stepping forward with her palms open. "My name is Sarah. I'm a nurse. I'm here to help." "Liar," the old man spat. "You're late." Extraction window closed. His blue right eye locked on her, sharp, alert, not confused. Dr. Evans hissed from behind her, "Jenkins, get out of the way." Sarah didn't move. "Gregory," she said quietly, "he's not psychotic." Evans scoffed. "He broke an orderly's nose." "Yes," Sarah replied, with a palm strike, "clean. Efficient." Evans blinked. So that's not panic," she said, "that's training." Evans waved it off. "He's delirious. Heavy metal poisoning. Sepsis. He's a danger." Inside the room, Arthur Vance's breathing slowed, not calmed, but controlled. In through the nose. Hold. Out through the mouth. Combat breathing. Sarah noticed his hands. Even while shaking, his right index finger tapped against his thigh. Tap, 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 tap. A timing rhythm. She noticed the tattoo on his forearm, faded, burned over, almost destroyed. But beneath the scar tissue she could make out the shape of a knight. And something like a lightning bolt. She noticed the way his head tilted slightly to favor one ear, listening for footsteps. No doctor had written any of that down. "Get the straps," Evans ordered. The guards moved. That was when the old man exploded. He kicked out with shocking speed. The first guard went down, howling as the blow crushed muscle. The second lunged forward, grappling him onto the bed. The heart monitor screamed. "Broken arrow!" Arthur shouted. "Broken arrow, unit." "Stop," Sarah yelled. Evans thrust the syringe forward. Inject him. Sarah stepped between the needle and the patient. Are you trying to kill him? She snapped. What? Look at the monitor, she said. His heart's already in arrhythmia. Sedate him now and you'll stop it. The room froze. Arthur thrashed beneath the guard, eyes wild, not with rage, but terror. Tears leaked from the corner of his good eye as he stared at the ceiling, seeing something none of them could. Unit 77, he whispered hoarsely. Heavy static, confirm perimeter. Sarah's chest tightened. She knew that voice. Not the words, the tone. Everyone out, she said. Evans stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You can't be serious. 5 minutes, Sarah said, eyes blazing. Or you explain to the board why he coded on your watch. A long, dangerous pause. Finally, Evans threw up his hands. 5 minutes. The room emptied. The door clicked shut. Silence returned, thin and fragile. Arthur Vance curled against the headboard, shivering, still watching the door, still holding the imaginary line. Sarah didn't approach him. She pulled a chair to the foot of the bed and sat. She waited. Minutes passed. His breathing slowly eased. You're exhausted, she said gently. He didn't answer. You don't have to fight me, she continued. I'm not here to extract you. A rough laugh escaped him. They always say that. Sarah leaned forward. Landscape architects don't know what broken arrow means. His tapping finger stopped. Slowly, he turned his head toward her. I'm not a sergeant, he rasped. I design gardens. Sarah gave a sad smile. My father said the same thing. Arthur stiffened. My dad never told us where he served, Sarah said softly. But every 4th of July, he sat in the basement with the lights off. Arthur swallowed. He had a tattoo, she went on. A knight, and a bolt of lightning. Arthur's eyes went cold. You see things you shouldn't, he warned. Maybe, Sarah said, but before he died, he kept asking one question. Arthur's breath hitched. Is Unit 77 clear? The room seemed to shrink. There is no Unit 77, Arthur whispered, we don't exist. You exist right now, Sarah said, and you're dying. She stood. If you don't let me treat you, this won't end like a mission, she said. It'll end quietly, alone. Arthur stared at the ivy pole like it was a snake. It's not the medicine, he whispered. It's the sleep, if I sleep. I talk. Sarah felt a chill. The ledger, he murmured, tapping his temple. They can't have it. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Time was up. Sarah stepped closer. There was one thing left she could do. One line her father had sworn her never to speak. The door handle began to turn. Sarah leaned in, and broke the silence with 5 forbidden words. The shadow is long, but the fox walks at midnight. Arthur Vance froze. His eyes widened in disbelief. And for the first time, the soldier looked home. Arthur Vance's mouth trembled. For a long moment, no sound came out at all. His chest rose once, sharp and shallow, then again, slower this time. The wildness in his eye didn't disappear, but it shifted. Recalibrated. Like a weapon being lowered, not disarmed. The moon, he whispered. Sarah didn't move, didn't breathe. The moon pays no debts, Arthur finished, his voice breaking as if the words hurt to say. Sarah nodded once. Permission given. The tension in his body collapsed all at once. Arthur slumped back against the pillows, suddenly looking every one of his years, frail, skeletal, fever-soaked. The fight drained out of him, leaving behind a man who had been holding the line far too long. Sarah moved quickly. She prepped the IV with steady hands, though her pulse hammered in her ears. When the needle slid into his vein, Arthur didn't flinch. He watched her the entire time, eyes locked on her face, as if afraid she might vanish. You're Ironside's girl, he murmured. Yes, she whispered back. The door burst open. Dr. Evans stormed in, flanked by 2 police officers and 3 security guards. Enough, Evans snapped. Step away from the patient. Arthur's head lifted. Stand down, he said. The room went still. It wasn't volume that did it, it was authority. Evans froze mid-step, startled by the sudden change. The police officers glanced at one another. The nurse is my designated medical officer, Arthur continued, voice calm, iron hard. Anyone else approaches this bed, I'll consider it a hostile act. Evans scoffed, trying to regain control. This is ridiculous. Arthur turned his gaze to the officers. You boys don't want this report. A beat. The officers stepped back. Evans swore under his breath. Fine, but if he so much as twitches. He won't, Sarah said. The antibiotics began to drip. Arthur's eyelids fluttered, heavy now. As sleep finally pulled at him, he leaned toward Sarah, voice barely audible. Be careful, he whispered. The code, it's a beacon. To who? Sarah asked. Arthur's eyes closed. The man who hunted us, he breathed. The pale horse, he's not dead. His head fell back against the pillow. Sleep took him. Sarah stood there, chilled to the bone. She should have felt relief. Instead, dread settled in her gut. As she adjusted his gown to check his abdomen, her fingers brushed against something wrong. She lifted the fabric. Her breath caught. A wound, not a bruise. A bullet entry, crudely stitched with fishing line. Arthur hadn't fallen. He'd been hunted. Protocol screamed in her head. Gunshot wounds meant reports, police, paper trails. She covered the wound with a clean bandage, hands shaking. Then something slipped from the pocket of Arthur's jacket as she moved it aside. A Zippo lighter. Heavy, scratched, cold. She flipped it open. No spark. But the bottom plate felt loose. Sarah pried it open. Inside, wrapped in oil paper, was a micro SD card. You found it. Sarah spun around. Arthur was awake. Lucid. The ledger, she whispered. He nodded weakly. What's left of it? Who did this to you? She asked. Arthur swallowed. Julian Kane. The name felt heavy. Wrong. He sold us, Arthur continued. Used Unit 77 to move weapons. Drugs. Then burned us when we knew too much. Sarah's chest tightened. My father. He tried to warn command, Arthur said. Kane jammed the comms. Left us to die. A tear slid down Sarah's cheek. He's powerful now, Arthur went on. Contractor. Political ties. He's cleaning house. The overhead speaker crackled. Code Gray. Main lobby. Arthur went rigid. He's here, he whispered. Sarah shoved the SD card back into the lighter and slipped it into her scrub pocket. Downstairs, Julian Kane stood at the reception desk like he owned it. Perfect suit, silver hair, calm smile. This is a matter of national security, he said smoothly, flashing a badge. The guard hesitated. Kane leaned in. Your cooperation saves lives. Room 304. That was all Kane needed. On the third floor, Sarah shoved a chair against the door. We need to run, she whispered. Arthur shook his head. Too late. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Slow, confident. Kane's voice drifted closer. Dr. Evans. A thud. A body hitting the floor. Sarah clamped a hand over her mouth. He's killing them, she whispered. Arthur pushed himself upright, grabbing surgical scissors. We break the ambush, he said. The door opened. Kane stood there, smiling. Miss Jenkins, he said pleasantly. Give me the old man. He drew a suppressed pistol. Now. Sarah dropped to the floor as Arthur kicked the ivy pole into the hall. Gunshots cracked. Fire alarm, Arthur shouted. Sarah slammed the handle. Chaos erupted. Strobe lights. Sirens. They ran. Down stairwells. Past screaming staff. Into the sub-basement. Arthur collapsed against the oxygen tanks. I need chaos, he gasped. He told her what to do. Open the valves. Cut the power. Kane's men burst in. Arthur stood tall. Mark. Sarah pulled the lever. Darkness. Arthur swung metal into live current. Light exploded. Fire roared. Run. Arthur shoved her toward a maintenance hatch. I'm not leaving you, she cried. Tell the truth, he said. That's the mission. He slammed the hatch shut above her. Sarah crawled into the darkness as the world behind her turned white. The blast threw Sarah forward through the maintenance shaft like a rag doll. She hit concrete hard, the air ripping from her lungs in a silent scream. For a moment, there was nothing, no sound, no light, just the taste of dust and blood in her mouth. Then the alarms faded back in. Distant, muffled. She pushed herself onto her elbows, body screaming in protest. Her cardigan was gone, scrub top torn at the shoulder, skin burned and raw, but she was alive. Arthur wasn't. The thought hit her harder than the explosion. No, she whispered, forcing herself upright. No, no, no. The shaft sloped downward into the hospital's old service tunnels, abandoned during renovations years ago. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the walls, casting long, trembling shadows. Sarah staggered forward. Behind her, the sub-basement burned. She could smell it now, electrical fire, melted plastic, something darker beneath it. A sound echoed faintly through the tunnel. Not an alarm. Boots. She froze. Kane's men. They hadn't all died in the blast. Sarah fumbled into her pocket, fingers closing around the Zippo lighter. The metal felt heavier now, more dangerous. She ran. The tunnel forked ahead, left sloping upward toward an old loading bay, right disappearing into darkness. She chose right, heart pounding, breath ragged. Her mind raced. Arthur had known he wouldn't survive. That wasn't panic back there, it was preparation. Tell the truth. That was the mission. The tunnel opened into a forgotten storage room stacked with rusted gurneys and broken monitors. Sarah ducked behind a metal cabinet just as flashlight beams swept across the doorway. Split up, a man barked. She's injured, she won't get far. Sarah clamped a hand over her mouth to stop her breathing from giving her away. One set of footsteps moved off. Another came closer. She waited until the shadow passed, then moved, slow, silent, slipping through a side door she hadn't noticed before. Stairs. Up. She climbed until her legs burned, until her vision swam. The stairwell ended at a steel door marked Archives, restricted. Locked. She slammed her shoulder into it once, twice. On the third hit, the latch snapped. Sarah stumbled inside and locked it behind her. The archives were cold and silent. Rows of shelves filled with old paper records, dusty boxes, microfilm reels. Everything the hospital had never bothered to digitize. She slid to the floor. Her hands shook as she opened the Zippo again and removed the micro SD card. This better be worth it, she whispered. She needed a computer. At the far end of the room, a single desk sat beneath a flickering lamp. An ancient terminal, probably untouched in a decade. She limped over and powered it on. The screen glowed to life. Sarah inserted the card. For a terrifying second, nothing happened. Then folders appeared. Unit 77. Black Transport. Kane, Julian, Authorization. Her breath caught. She opened the first file. Video. Grainy helmet cam footage from years ago. Men in desert camouflage moving through smoke, gunfire snapping overhead. She recognized Arthur instantly, younger, stronger. And her father, Mark Jenkins, alive. Contact command, her father shouted in the footage. We've got civilians. Kane rerouted the convoy. Static crackled. Then a calm voice cut in. Julian Kane. Negative, Unit 77. Proceed as ordered. Those are families, Mark yelled. Proceed, Kane repeated. The feed jumped. An explosion. The video ended. Sarah covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She opened another file. Financial records. Shell companies. Bribes. Arms shipments disguised as humanitarian aid. Dates. Names. Kane hadn't just betrayed Unit 77. He'd built an empire on their graves. A new folder blinked at the bottom of the screen. Failsafe. Sarah hesitated, then clicked. Arthur appeared on screen. Recorded recently. Sitting upright, composed, eyes steady. If you're watching this, he said, then I didn't make it. Her chest tightened. Sarah, your father was the best man I ever served with. He died trying to stop Kane. I survived because I followed orders I should have questioned. Arthur swallowed. This card contains everything. Enough to burn Kane to the ground. But it only works if it goes public. Law enforcement is compromised. Command is compromised. He leaned closer to the camera. You have to become the witness. Footsteps slammed against the archive door. Open up, a voice shouted. Sarah jumped. Arthur continued, unflinching. They'll call you a liar. A traitor. They'll say you're just a nurse. A crash rattled the door. Arthur's eyes hardened. Prove them wrong. The recording ended. The door buckled. Sarah ripped the SD card out, jammed it back into the lighter, and looked around desperately. There. An emergency chute, used once for paper disposal, now half collapsed. She ran and dove inside as the door finally gave way. The chute spat her out into daylight. The hospital's rear courtyard erupted around her, sirens, smoke, police cruisers screeching in from every direction. News vans already clustered at the gates. Someone had called it in. Kane stood near the entrance, speaking calmly to a cluster of officers, blood splattered on his sleeve like an accident. Sarah staggered forward. "Stop him," she screamed. "He's the one." Hands grabbed her. "Easy," an officer barked. "Ma'am, you're hurt." Kane turned. Their eyes met. For the first time, his smile cracked. "You're mistaken," he said gently. "She's in shock." Sarah yanked free and raised the Zippo. "This," she shouted, voice raw but clear, "contains evidence of war crimes. Of murder, of treason." Reporters swung their cameras toward her. Kane stepped forward, eyes cold now. "Give that to me." Sarah clicked the lighter open and held it high. "My name is Sarah Jenkins," she said. "I'm a registered nurse, and my father died because of this man." She threw the lighter, not to Kane, but to the waiting journalist behind him. Chaos exploded. Microphones surged. Cameras flashed. Kane lunged. Too late. "Get her," he shouted. But the truth was already moving faster than him. Police radios crackled. Orders changed. Guns lowered, then raised again, this time toward Kane. Sarah collapsed to her knees as medics rushed in. Kane was cuffed, screaming now, the calm finally gone. As they loaded Sarah onto a stretcher, she stared up at the sky. Gray clouds. Morning light. Arthur hadn't run. He'd held the line. And for the first time since she was a child, Sarah Jenkins knew exactly who she was. Not just a nurse. A witness. A survivor. A voice the dead had trusted to speak. The world didn't explode. It unraveled. That was what surprised Sarah most. She lay in a hospital bed 3 floors above the chaos, an IV in her arm and a white bandage wrapped around her shoulder, watching the ceiling tiles as voices echoed outside the door. Doctors. Investigators. People with questions. So many questions. They came in waves. First the police, careful now, respectful in a way they hadn't been before. Then federal agents, flashing credentials she'd never seen, speaking in low voices and writing everything down. Then lawyers, some from the hospital, some from places that refused to say who they represented. Sarah answered the same questions again and again. Yes, that was her voice on the video. Yes, she knew the man who died in the sub-basement. Yes, she understood what she was accusing Julian Kane of. Each time, her hands shook less. Outside, the story caught fire. A nurse. A dead general. A secret unit erased from history. A defense contractor arrested on hospital grounds. By noon, Kane's name dominated every screen in the country. The footage from Unit 77 leaked before anyone could stop it. Then the financial records. Then Arthur's final message. Public pressure crushed what silence had protected. Kane's allies vanished overnight. Phones went unanswered. Accounts were frozen. Committees were formed, real ones this time, with eyes watching from every direction. By evening, the word "alleged" quietly disappeared from the headlines. Sarah watched it all from her bed, feeling strangely distant from the storm she'd started. Dr. Evans never came back. Neither did most of the administrators who had tried to silence her. 3 days later, a woman in a dark suit entered Sarah's room alone. "I'm Director Hale," she said, offering a hand. "Oversight Committee." Sarah didn't take it. "You're here to make this go away," she said flatly. Hale smiled, not offended, tired, honest. "I'm here to make sure it never happens again." She sat. Unit 77 existed, Hale said. Off the books. Illegal. And effective. Kane exploited that. So did others before him. Sarah's jaw tightened. "And my father?" Hale exhaled slowly. "Will be officially listed as killed in action, with honors, along with the rest of the unit." It wasn't justice. But it was truth. "There's more," Hale continued. "We want you to testify, publicly." Sarah felt the weight of it settle into her chest. "They'll tear you apart," Hale warned. "They'll question your memory, your motives, your sanity." Sarah thought of Arthur standing in the fire. "I know," she said. The hearings lasted weeks. Sarah sat under hot lights while powerful men shifted in their seats and avoided her eyes. She spoke clearly. Simply, she didn't embellish. She didn't need to. Arthur's words played on a screen behind her. So did her father's face. Julian Kane didn't look at her once. When the verdict came, it was quiet. No applause. Life sentences. Asset seizures. Names unsealed, programs dismantled. History corrected, line by line. Months passed. Sarah left St. Aldridge Hospital for good. She couldn't walk those halls anymore. Not without hearing the alarms. not without seeing the fire. Instead, she took a position with an international medical oversight group, one that protected doctors and nurses working in conflict zones, where truth was often the first casualty. She trained people now, taught them how to recognize when something felt wrong, how to document, how to survive long enough to speak. On the anniversary of the incident, Sarah stood at a quiet military cemetery. A new headstone gleamed in the sunlight. Mark Jenkins, Captain, Unit 77. Died in service. Next to it, another. Arthur Vance, General, Ret. Held the line. Sarah placed her hands on the cool stone. You didn't disappear, she whispered. Either of you. The wind stirred the grass. As she turned to leave, a young nurse approached her, nervous, hopeful. Ms. Jenkins? She asked. They said you'd be here. Sarah smiled softly. Yes, she said. What's wrong? The nurse hesitated. Something doesn't feel right where I work. Sarah's expression hardened, not with fear, but with resolve. Then we listen to that feeling, she said, and we don't stay quiet. They walked away together, the graves behind them, the future ahead. The truth had cost everything. But it had also given something back. A voice, a warning, and a promise that the line would always be held.